Hey, welcome back again everyone to the 6th devlog for Nightward or Night Ward. I haven't really decided on that yet. That's right, it took me way too long to decide, but I finally got a name for the game now. And the reason for that is, I needed to make a Steam page. For a while I was referring to the game as Crystal Keepers, which I got from ChatGPT. But I kid you not, I searched it up on the Steam store and there was a game releasing in 1 week with the same name. So yeah, Nightward it is. I've made so many changes to the game that it's hard to include them all in this video, but I'll try my best to update you guys on the most interesting additions here. Oh, and I can't believe I almost forgot, but make sure to go wishlist the game on Steam. That's one of the biggest things you guys can do to help support the project, and it'll only take a few seconds. Alright, on to the actual video now. First up, we have some changes related to game feel. You always hear this term tossed around, but basically all it means is, do the basic systems in your game feel nice to interact with? And usually this is achieved through animations and visual effects, as well as sound, but I haven't really touched that too much. The most obvious example is when you're attacking enemies, of course. So now there's this quick white flash and squash and stretch that happens whenever you attack an enemy or damage it in any way. Something that kind of goes hand in hand with this is these poof particles that pop up whenever you kill anything. Another more subtle change is that now there's slight screen shake whenever you take damage or deal damage. Oh yeah, and this one thing that I take for granted now is the player actually swings their weapon. All of these things come together to make combat feel just a lot more nice, without even having to change anything in how it acts. Of course, I did make a ton of changes to combat too, but you'll have to wait till later in the video to see all that. In terms of other improvements to the game feel, I added these gates, which really add a lot to the rooms, as well as some new UI animations like this sliding one for the inventory and these item pickup animations. Item tooltips also have these icons next to their respective stats now, which makes them a lot more readable. Speaking of items, I've been busy adding a lot of those as well. First of all, armors aren't just randomly generated now, but have a ton of different effects depending on each kind. There's this Giant's Guard, which makes the player a lot bigger, and, doubles the player's health. There's a flaming coat that just burns enemies in a circle. This icy armor slowly slows enemies that are near the player until eventually they are fully frozen and then the player can hit them and crack them open. Before there was no excitement when you got armor since you just look at how much health and armor it gave you, but now there's actually a reason to go and get new armors since they all do different things. There's also quite a few new towers and I must say these are some of my favorites yet. Everybody loves a flamethrower in a video game, so now there's a flamethrower tower. I also got the idea for a summoning tower from my Discord. It repeatedly spawns these little ghost slime allies that go and chase after other enemies for you. One of the coolest in my opinion is the black hole tower, which shoots out a sucky zone that explodes and damages everything inside of it. It's also worth noting here that I added tower durability so you have to repair your towers with your essence for them to keep functioning. Now to talk about some relics. The Bloodstone allows you to sacrifice a portion of your own HP to damage enemies around you on command. The enchanted stopwatch item now slows down enemies around you in order to speed yourself up, and there's a neat little visual effect to go with it. The Crystal Plate is a unique tier item that absorbs some damage that you take, and then retaliates with homing orbs that seek out and damage enemies. The last relic I'd like to mention is the Phoenix Amulet, which allows you to respawn when you die on a cooldown of course, and damages enemies close to you, and provides you a bit of invincibility so you don't just instantly die. That isn't all the new items, but it would be boring if I just spoiled them all here. One thing I'm super happy to have gotten working is Steam multiplayer, and yes, multiplayer still does work. I also completely remade the lobby to have a lot more features, including player skins, which are really just recolorings, but it's something for now. One thing that's been a constant struggle for me ever since I started making this game is keeping it feeling fair and balanced for the player. So here's some balancing changes I've made over the last few months, starting with the enemies. First of all, I've added pathfinding to the enemies now. To kind of go hand in hand with this, I've also made it so you can't shoot through walls anymore, since that just allows for way too much cheesing. Most weapons also don't shoot through enemies now either. There's also a weapon animation and the player is slowed while they're going through it, which prevents the player from just holding their attack button for the entire run. The pathfinding works in a way where enemies view each other as obstacles, so you don't just get one gigablob of enemies on top of each other that goes and one-shots you. I also found it was possible just to kite enemies out while you regen health, So now the player regens a lot less health naturally, but hearts and coins and sometimes essence will now spawn whenever you clear a room. After all these things combined, combat now feels much more engaging than it did in the last video. Apart from tower durability, there are some other changes I've made to the tower defense part of the game. For starters, there's now crystal upgrades, which increase things like your tower strength and your crystal's health overall. For enemy waves, there's a slow trickle of enemies at all times, but every once in a while there's a red wave which has way more enemies than a normal wave would. I'm thinking of combining these two in some way, where maybe after every red wave you get a few upgrades to choose from, kinda like in games like Vampire Survivors. And now for the last of the balancing changes. For starters, having to pass up a relic on the ground just because you can only hold 3 felt really bad. I decided to follow suit of basically every other roguelike game there is and make it so you can hold infinite relics, and made them a lot weaker to accommodate. In general, knowing that a relic is a permanent upgrade makes it a lot more rewarding to get. One less obvious but really significant change is that rooms generate in a completely different order now. There's now one main branch connecting the start of the floor to the end of the floor, and then rooms like shops and upgrade rooms branch off from the main path. This does a few things. First of all, it prevents the player from having to backtrack, since they'll likely have money by the time they find a shop. It also prevents the player from just finding the ladder right away and going on to the next floor. Some of you may remember in the last video when I said that I was going to experiment with adding different zones to the map. I decided I liked this idea, so I added a desert floor. I'm really happy with how the decoration of this floor turned out. And the beetle enemy is probably my favorite enemy in the whole game right now. Another enemy I added are these cute little potions that will run up to you then explode in your face and deal a ton of damage. Anyways, that's about all I have to show you this time. If you want to see a full changelog for the game or otherwise just want to chat about it, feel free to join the Discord. I'll put the link in the description. I also plan on having some people help me test the game, so be on the lookout for that as well. If you have any suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments. They actually really help me come up with ideas. I'm really happy with the progress I've been making on this project, and the game's looking more and more like a finished game every week. I can say it's still a far way out from release, but the end is definitely in sight. Alright, that's it from me. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.